It is the ML Sports Platter all over the major platforms. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube page at ML Sports Platter. We are brought to you by St. Bonaventure University's online Masters in Journalism and Batavia Downs Gaming. Great concert series coming up this summer. BataviaDownsGaming.com for that. And catch Ravens Bills this Sunday night at 34 Rush. Thurman Thomas, the Hall of Famer, that's his restaurant. Great drink and eats for you for the big game at 6:30 in the divisional round on Sunday night. Look at this. I brought on a legend in the business and a guy who went to St. Bonaventure himself. Greg Mitchell joins the program, of course, a film director, a longtime journalist. He's on the Wall of Fame. That's somewhere I'm not, of course, down at the journalism building. Greg, it's a pleasure, buddy. How are you?
Hey, I'm very good. Always enjoy watching you every few days. And I'm an original Bills fan, too, going back to the early 60s, went to many games and was actually there for Cookie Gilchrist's first exhibition game.
Incredible.
At War Memorial. So I go back with the Bills.
Wow, the old rock pile. I appreciate you coming on, and you're going to share some great stories with me. First of all, obviously, as a Bona alum, we start right here in the present. I know we're coming off of the tough couple of losses here, but mostly an energetic time. Woj is down there, and I know there's been so many historical celebrations recently with the 1970 group and recently 67, 68, and you saw so much of that. You got a big-time connection to our guy Hazy as well. So why don't you kind of get into just tying the past to the present and the excitement around Woj being there as well. Take it all. I don't know, Greg, try to take, 70 years into 3 minutes? Can you do that?
Well, maybe 60, but
60, okay. You know what I mean.
Don't make me even older.
Or me.
It's it's amazing to see the Riley Center still there. I mean, it takes me back just because it's the same arena, and of course it was only the field house when I was there, and no real name on it. But I mean, just in a nutshell, I wanted to be a newspaper man when I grew up. Sounds very quaint now, newspaper reporter. And I went down to Bonaventure for press day, and fell in love with the place. And the field house was just going up then. When I came back in September 1966 to enroll, the field house was nearly finished, not quite finished. And of course, as everyone knows, it's not only a great arena, but it was, it had all the student government offices and the BV and the radio station and, swimming pool and the ping pong downstairs and the TV and everything else. So it was a big, big deal for new students to come in. Of course, the girls' dorm had just opened. So it was quite a time. And anyway, so I came in, and as you mentioned, John Hayes, it was really kind of coincidental that we both ended up at St. Bonaventure. He was a year ahead of me. I got to watch him at Niagara Falls High School from when he was a freshman, and didn't really know him. He was a year ahead of me. And of course, I was when he enrolled at St. Bonaventure, I was super excited because I hadn't really counted on that. And so I was already a big Hayes fan. And just, what people need to understand a little bit about Hayes is that he still may be one of the greatest players ever in New York State. He still holds all the scoring records for the conference that Niagara Falls was in, which is still rated the top, at the top tier conferences, AAA or A or whatever it is. So he did his scoring against really, really terrific, tough teams, and without the 3-point shot or dunks or anything like that. So he still holds a 29.5 scoring record average. And he went to St. Bonaventure, and of course I was super excited about that and excited about the team. I'd always been an NU fan growing up. Went to NU games.
Cancel that, baby. Cancel that.
Niagara, yeah. I remember listening to the game on the radio when NU broke the 99 game win streak. And I was, of course, all for it then, but I flipped entirely, and very excited. And then, of course, the sad story of John Hayes hurting his knee on the first day of practice on October 15th. Unfortunately, they still were playing in Butler because the field house hadn't opened yet. And it's hard to say if the same accident would have happened, but basically he was never the same. He came back. He did not get the today's arthroscopic surgery. I guess he would have been out for a month or two and come back. So they didn't have that then. They chose not to redshirt him. And he came back. He missed the first couple games of the season. Then he came back against Xavier or DePaul, I can't remember which, in December, and scored 26 points in 28 minutes, which is like our bench total now for 10 games.
Yeah, right.
but he's 26 points in 28 minutes. And then the next game in the odd, which I went to, he got hurt again against Denver under the basket. And then he finally did get surgery belatedly. And, he was never the same. So you can imagine a guy who then the following year scored 13.5 points a game, what he might have done with two knees. So it's, some people may have wondered how he got into the Bonaventure Hall of Fame with his career numbers. But, he'll always have the freshman record. We know that. That'll never be broken, 33 points a game, if you can imagine that. And then, of course, he was on the great team and scored 13.5 points. So it's just, but for people who knew him, and then I became the friend later, and all the stories he told and everything else, it's just, it is sad. But anyway, that's my John Hayes connection going back to high school.
Yeah. Before we went on here, I said about 10, 15 minutes. So can you go 20? Because I think we're going to have to squeeze in a couple more here. Maybe 20.
You can run more commercials.
Yeah, right. 20, 25 minutes or so, because I can already tell how great of a guest you're going to be. I bring in the modern era to the late 60s, early 70s, because I want to ask you that you would be someone who would, this is just the perfect person to ask this question. What do you consider now to be the golden age of Bona basketball? Is it back with the Final Four and the NIT, when the NIT was enormous? And by the way, it's hard to go around college basketball and find a million places where you can walk in and see Final Four banner and an NIT championship banner when it actually mattered in the same gym. Yeah. Bona has that. And I try to tell people how big it is. Most people don't want to listen to me, but I try to tell them how big the NIT was. That was a golden era stretch, man. 60s, 70s, take 10, take 12, take 15 years, take whatever period. Then is it when I was there, 98 to 02, the tournament almost beat Kentucky, the Tim Wynn days? Is it the Mark Schmidt era with how hard it is to win? Now we've got the NIL portal. What do you consider to be kind of the golden era of Bona basketball? I know, Greg, it's very hard to compare eras. I get that, but you've seen all of it. And that's why I wanted to ask you that question.
Well, of course, I'd be prejudiced towards when I was there, because you not only got a 23-0 season and a Final Four.
Sure.
So again, that will certainly never happen again. So, but even before then, I mentioned I was a big Niagara fan growing up, but we were so envious of those early 60s Bonaventure teams, which were as good as the teams later, with Tom Stith and Sam. Freddie Crawford was like a John Hayes type. I mean, Freddie Crawford should have gone on and be an NBA All-Star. He was that good. So you had Freddie Crawford joining Tom Stith, who was already like the one or two best player in all of college ball. So, I mean, that's hard. So you had the momentum going. Bonaventure had always been sort of good in the 50s. You had the Tom Stith, Freddie Crawford era, Miles Aiken, Bonaventure near the top of the poll. So then you attract more players. So then you have this follow through throughout the 60s where and I guess that's what they're always aiming for, to have teams that are good enough that can attract, big name players. And now it's complicated by the NIL. Bonaventure could have gone, 27-3 this year, and they would still have trouble attracting players because of the money that's thrown around. So, but nevertheless, even back then, you try to have as good a team as you can. It looks good on TV. People say it's a good program or a good coach or whatever. So that's always the aim. And of course, you were there in a great era, and there's been several great eras, but the late 60s is pretty hard to top.
We'll keep it going here with our awesome guest, St. Bonaventure University class of 70, Greg Mitchell, of course, on the JMC Wall of Fame, and always a great supporter of the school. And you can follow his work all over the social platforms as well. The longtime film director and journalist. Where do you see the business going? It's crazy where we are now, right? I mean, even when I was in school, man, I was still using the floppy disk in the computer. Didn't really quite have the cell phone yet. The internet was really starting to, I'm starting to sound like a dude who, walked to school 3 miles, right? I mean, come on. So now, though, it's all over, right? We got channels galore. We've got the streaming. We've got social media. We're watching movies different ways. People are on their phones all the time. Where is the business going, do you think?
You mean journalism in general, or
absolutely everything under the umbrella of what is, journalism?
Yeah,
everything you've done, I've done, everything we know. Where's it going?
Well, I suppose it's going in a lot of different directions, and I think and people complain about it, myself included, and so forth. But you can watch all the Bonnies or most of the Bonnies games on ESPN Plus. I mean, who could have imagined Bonaventure? Here I'm 300 miles away or whatever, and I can watch every minute of every game.
Yeah.
So there's all that, and then of course social media stuff, and of course you use YouTube and Facebook, and there's 100 ways you connect better, and you can catch breaking news faster, stay on top of things. My son lives in Pasadena, and so I've been able to follow the latest things and the fires out there via social media and news sites and everything. So there's 100 ways things are better, but in some ways, things are worse because of the way people behave online and
Right.
the attacking people and the.
I never get any of that, Greg. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know. And then people also they choose what sites or news sites they choose that they want to believe or they do believe or they think are and they tune out other things. So you have people in their own silos who don't really look at stuff across the board and so forth. And I suppose that's true in sports journalism too. People they have their favorite outlets, and anything else. Someone has a contrary view about somebody or a team or a player, and that's then that gets attacked. But anyway, I was there in the sort of the golden age of newspapers, and so many people went to Bonaventure journalism to be reporters. Again, it sounds kind of quaint, and it slowly became more of the business attached to the business school and publicity and advertising, and of course now they have sports journalism, or you can major in that sort of thing. So it's even at Bonaventure, it's a completely different. But back in the '60s, it was known as one of the best journalism schools, journalism programs. And Dr. Giandoli,
man, still
Dr.
is.
Giandoli was still in his prime, and the school was on the entire department was on, and classrooms are on the basement of Plasman, and so it was. But one thing I wanted to mention back to basketball is just the real pleasure we had back then of freshmen going to freshman games before the varsity games. I mean, it was so you got to see Bob Lanier and the later the Matt Gant team was a tremendous freshman team.
It blows my mind, man, thinking about that. Go like Bob Lanier on a freshman team
compared
to like Pete Maravich or Lou Alcindor. Come on, man.
Well, and Calvin Murphy. So I got
Calvin Murphy for sure.
I saw 8 in my lifetime there. I saw 8 Murphy versus Lanier games, and of course I saw all the games at Niagara and the odd because I lived in Niagara, or I was from there also. But just to be able to go to a freshman game, I think they might have been at 6:30, and then the varsity game was at 8:30 or something like that.
Okay.
So it was that was really double the fun.
Yeah, see, I got my 99 2000. I don't know if you can see it. The Finishing Dreams, the paper from the BV back there with some of the shades from the old glory days as well. And, Timmy went on the cover of that newspaper back on the wall. Bona history was a little bit of a draw for me when I decided to go. I was looking at Ithaca, SU, Oswego, maybe local community college. There was a lot going on at home. And I went on a visit, and my buddy Shane Lacey was going there to swim, and we played trombone together in the wind ensemble as well. And he said, "Hey, have you looked at Bonaventure?" And I said, "Yeah, a little bit. I got a pamphlet." And he goes, "You got to go, man. You can get on radio on day one." And so I went down for a visit, and I kind of liked it, and ended up going there, and didn't like my freshman year, and ended up seeing it through and finished there. And it just has, I think, the first, second, and third steps of being a Bonnie. It's when you go and it feels right, like you said, and then you go and you realize how special it is, but you don't cherish it enough because you're so young, right? That's not what you do from 18 to 22. You cherish some things and you realize it, but then later on, you're really like, wow, I'm really glad I went there. Do you have those 3 as well?
Well, I stayed in touch with people, other, what do you say, Bonaventure legends. There was a guy named John Hanchett who was sort of my mentor at the Niagara Falls Gazette when I started out during the summers. And he later won a Pulitzer, and he's also on the Wall of Fame. And so I was very close to him growing up. And then I met others, I maintained my best friend from Bonaventure for many years. We were invited back there to give a talk, I think in the 1980s. So I always had this contact and followed the basketball and followed the fate of the journalism department and where that was going. So it's Bonaventure people. It's a small school, so the alumni particularly are it's a smaller group, but it's a more passionate group. So
yeah, we're loud. We're loud. We're crazy people. But it is funny for being so small. We're everywhere. I mean, everywhere you go, you see something. I mean, I was at a wedding a couple of years ago coming back from Naples. I'm in the airport in Philly, and there's a dude with a Bonaventure sweatshirt on. I walked up and go Bonas, and I said it, and I walked by it, and he said, "Hey, come here," and we started talking. He was 2012 grad, and we're everywhere, man. It's pretty cool.
Well, I'm gonna go. I briefly had a ticket for the Fordham game down here last week, and then the ticket disappeared. But I was going to go down into the Bronx for the Fordham game. So, but it is another big change in the games these days is even though I'm skeptical of the sort of the cliche that these athletes are so well tuned today, they can play 40 minutes a game,
right?
But it is true that the big change in today's game is all these timeouts.
Crazy.
And it used to be when I was there, and you go back to the Ironman 5, they did that without, timeouts, media timeouts every 4 minutes and, lasting 3 minutes and so forth. So it certainly is true that today's players have a better chance to play more minutes just because of this, the number of breaks.
Yeah, I mean, conditioning and strength, you have the timeouts, and let us not forget one little elbow. Oh, maybe it's a flagrant. Then there's more time for that. Or it's, you got to replay something, or there's a quick second. Oh, was he out of bounds or not? Then they go back to the camera. I mean, there's a million of them. And I do stats for ESPN, and sometimes I work a game, and it's like, oh, these used to be 2 hours and 2 minutes. Now they're like 2 hours and 25 minutes because of all of that. I wanted to just wrap on any final thoughts you had on the Bonaventure thing. You can go over you want it with it. If you don't, then that's fine. But also where people can get some of your work. I wanted you to plug some of your stuff, whether it's websites, different platforms, and all the rest. Just an unbelievable career, distinguished career for you, man. So congrats.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah. And one thing is that coming out of the Jandoli program and the journalism program, which really stressed the nuts and bolts so strongly, really gave me I came to New York and got into the magazine business, being an editor on a magazine. And I did that for many years off and on. And I always had a leg up on other people just from the journalism training. Most people are getting into that kind of thing, not really trained as journalists. So they're kind of doing the best they can. But the basics I got in the journalism program at Bonaventure just has served me well to this day. But, particularly the first part of my career where it was unusual to find someone with a journalism background, in that field. But so anyway, I went on to, I've written about 13 books. I've now been directing films for, that have been in, festivals and won awards and been on PBS and streaming and so forth the last few years. I've worked as a magazine editor. So what's funny is that although you could say I've done a lot of very different things, it's all been within this journalism, writing, reporting, editing thing. So in a way, I've had a kind of a boring career on a straight line from going to journalism school to doing all these things related to it. So, but if people want to, if you Google, Greg Mitchell, you'll find I have a very popular Substack. People can find. If you go to Amazon, you'll find a number of books, including the book called "The Tunnels" about people who dug tunnels to escape under the Berlin Wall. I've got several books on political campaigns, historic. All my books are histories of some sort or politics or whatever, and I actually have a new film about football, and I'm on Twitter as Greg Mitch. And anyway, there's ways to find me. I don't necessarily plug myself that much, but there's a lot of things out there you can find.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I wonder how, it's so overused, the question of like, oh, what advice would you give to young journalism students? I don't want to ask you that. And I just said that I was done, but I did want to add on to the back end of what you just said is I wonder how an 18-year-old Greg Mitchell would attack it now. Like, would you still go to Bona? Do you do it the old fashioned way? Do you do it at home off all the social channels? Do you try to become an entrepreneur right off the shoot? How does that 18-year-old Greg Mitchell attack the business today with that passion?
Well, I hope I'd still want to go to the physical school, and live in the dorm and do all those things. Yeah. And maybe I'd be more interested in some other. I mean, I got into making films, just in recent years, actually. So, but whether I would have done something more like that then, or radio, I mean, I always loved radio.
Yeah.
I don't know, but you worked at the BV. You knew it was a
little bit, not much.
Oh, not much. Oh, okay.
Not much. I did a feature story. I think on why I didn't like the Bona Wolf actually is the choice for the match.
Okay.
I kind of turned a little bit, but then I started realizing the history behind it, and I was like, all right, whatever. Plus, it's Bonnie's. It's not like it's okay. And then you kind of put it all together. I'm like, all right. And then I got older, and then I just kind of didn't care.
Yeah, well, I go back to Bill Swan as the Brown Indian.
Yeah, right. Of course.
So it was a different era in a lot of different ways.
No doubt. But I was all in radio, man. That was my big thing. WSBU, became sports director. I did a little bit BV, not much. Did some SBU TV, and then graduated in 2002. And now I see some of the stuff that these kids have in terms of like at their disposal. I see the staff. I see the professors they've got. Aaron's doing an unbelievable job down there. And I'm like, man, I'm kind of jealous of that era. Denny's still there. Congrats to Denny, by the way, who's retiring soon. But I look at that school now, and I'm like, man, I almost I got to call up, see if I got any NIL. Give me a black bag, get down there, maybe some eligibility left down there. Huh, Greg? Gee whiz.
Oh, Denny just quit. Just resigned. I haven't resigned. He retired. Yeah. Over Christmas, so he's gone.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It was this past semester. What am I doing? Well, we're still kind of. Yeah, because did they start second semester now already?
I don't think it's probably this week or next week.
Yeah, so see, it's not quite there yet, right? It's not quite
the end. More timeout. We're talking about more timeouts for the players. There's more timeouts for the students too. Jesus, we went right till like Memorial Day also.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no vacation time for you. Well, this was incredible. I knew it would be. I'm so happy you reached out to me on Facebook. You beat me because I was going to get to you in a couple of weeks, but we were able to get connected and do this. I'll have you back in no time as well. The longtime journalist, film director, go get his stuff. A Wall of Famer on the JMC side of things for St. Bonnie, a class of 1970 member. That was a pretty good year. Greg Mitchell, thank you so much, my friend. The interview brought to you by Batavia Downs Gaming and Western OTB. Thanks, Greg. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Go Bills.